So today we are meeting with David Lim. David is an extraordinary human being. So I'll give you a little bit of context about how David came into my life and who David was for me. And then we'll jump in and we'll meet David in person and we'll do the whole thing. Let's get some context. David came into my life via my first supervisor, Becky Rosenthal, who is a brilliant clinician. She's totally still alive. Makes it sound like she's dead. She's alive. She's great. She's phenomenal and brilliant. Becky and David used to work together at Kaiser. I think I'm getting this right. And David, for her, so Becky's like a real by the books kind of gal, right? Like she dots every I and she crosses every T. Like she knows her stuff so well. And she's really good at supervision in that way for incoming clinicians who need a little bit more hand-holding. And I think I probably needed a little bit more hand-holding at the beginning. David and Becky knew each other because they worked together. And David, I remember Becky talking about David as like, he's a wild card. You're going to love him. And so then I came to a point in my supervision needs as a therapist, because, all therapists have to get supervision. I came to a point where I needed a little bit bigger of a pen to practice in. And Becky knew that. She's so good. She knew that. So she hooked me up with David. And David came into my life and I came into his life. And he was my supervisor for probably like the final year of getting supervision as a licensed clinical social worker. David's also a licensed clinical social worker. And what I love I love so many things about David. And I think that you're going to listen to David and I am guessing you will fall madly in love with him just as I did in a totally professional way. But one of the things that I love about David is that he just goes for it. He doesn't hold back. I don't know whether or not he's afraid, but like he totally gives me the impression that he moves through this world with this like sense of ease and purpose and decisiveness and drive and motivation that I find so inspiring. So, and maybe David and I will chat a little bit about it, but David helped me with a lot of stuff, even outside of like my clinical stuff with clients. Like he helped me with my personal stuff. And so David's totally the kind of therapist that if I were to start therapy again, I would go see him. I love David. So anyway, so that's the bit about David. We're going to jump in and meet David right now. And I am so excited for you to get to meet this person who has meant a tremendous amount in my life and made a huge impact in my life and also in my clients' lives because it all trickles downstream. So let's jump in and meet David right now. Now let's pause and put the person in the context. David, do you know what the best part of this is, aside from the fact that I have apparently blindsided you with this interview?
Oh, there's more good stuff? Yeah, let's hear it.
Is that I actually I recorded this little like 3-minute introduction for you right before we did this. And I talked about Becky and how she's real by the books and how I came to a point in my career development, like in my clinical training, where she was like, you need a bigger pen, sis. And I was like, I do need a bigger pen. And she goes, you're going to love David Lim. He's a wild card. And then you came into my life and I shared a little bit about how like you have made such a meaningful difference in my life as a clinician. And that has like some of the things that you have said and taught me and helped me work through in our work together has like rippled out into my client work in this way that is so profoundly meaningful. And like, I don't directly credit you for a lot of the like brilliant things that I say, but I probably should. I should
I don't
probably
think people
cite
would
you.
believe it. They wouldn't believe it. So just take credit for it. If they saw me, I don't know if they'd believe it came from me. So,
You're a
but
star.
thank you.
You're a star, David.
Those are such, yeah. So I feel like crying because those are such wonderful words, and I'm humbled, and I'm so thankful that we were able to find each other on our mutual journeys. And fortunate. I mean, Becky was right. It was just a nice personality connect as well,
Hmm.
right? And so, I mean, I just remember you soaking up things, me, and then having fun. And it was never work with you. It was always pretty fun. So, and I'm glad that, and now look at you, star therapist, star mental health, media person, and I love all of your posts. Your posts are actually very informative, super informative, and so easygoing and humorous that it allows people to, I think, absorb the wisdom, right, without defensiveness. So, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
saying that. It's such an interesting space to occupy, like being in the social media world, right? Because like we are trained to not share anything
yeah,
about ourselves,
yeah,
right? And so I noticed that I have started doing this thing. Like I'm so good at getting people to talk about themselves.
yeah.
And I used to be so good at talking about myself, like so good at it.
And it's gone
It's
now.
gone
Oh
now.
no. Yeah.
Right? Like, what do I do? It's so like I don't know, like any good exposure therapist, I'm like, God dang it, that means I have to start talking about myself, doesn't it?
Well, it's so it's understandable, right? Old school therapy said no, you don't say anything, right? Uh, uh, because that might taint the experience of the person that you're seeing. And so there's credibility to that because if you don't want to make the session about you, right? However, I mean nowadays, and I credit DBT a lot. DBT kind of said, hey, look, you know what? If you want to build connections, then self-disclosure, right? As long as it's relevant to whatever that person is working on, is totally fine, and I believe that. And so I credit DBT for a lot of my ability to think, okay, if I self-disclose right now, how am I using it? So if somebody is struggling with, say, uh, um, I don't know, maybe something a behavior that they have been habitualized to do, then what I might do is say, well, I admire your courage, and I get it. It took me 6 months to use skills A, B, and C when I was dealing with my behavior,
Mhm.
and so I understand completely. So sometimes, I mean, I think you know, I think therapy today is a little bit different, and I do think that, and so you need to be self-disclosing because I know you can do it appropriately, right? So yeah, yeah,
Thank you for saying that.
yeah.
And I'm working on doing like I can do it in the context of client work. Like I've become quite skilled at
Mm-hmm.
that. I am re-entering the world of disclosing intimate details of my life in the public world, right? So like on
Mm-hmm.
social
Yeah.
media as an example. I do notice that I get a little bit sticky in like friendship, right? Because it is this interpersonal
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, right? And it can be so hard to take off that therapist hat and to like
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
just be
yeah.
there. And so I noticed that that's where it is stickiest for me. I mean, talk to me about the thing that is pulling you most right now as a
Mm-hmm.
clinician, because ultimately what I want us to play with is like I want us to talk a little bit about the thing that you do, right?
Okay.
And then what I want to do is like be a person with you who is doing the thing that you do, so that people who are watching or listening have an opportunity to hear and to see like what it actually looks like to do therapy. I
Okay.
think it can be very sort of, it's stigmatized, it's very closed doors,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really know what goes on in one therapy. Like, is this therapy? Like, do I just talk? Like, is it chit? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would love to be able to provide some really like real life examples of what it
Yeah.
would look like to do this work. And I'm happy to bring something that is like mine to
Yeah.
work on and for us to look at. I think that'd be interesting.
Okay.
Or if there's like somebody that you're working with currently that you're like, yeah, like let's do this person. We can do that too. So yeah. So what is like calling to you most right now? IFS?
Yes, IFS is calling to me probably the most. And so currently I'm helping out with the IFS training, and I'm simultaneously kind of leveling up my own fidelity training. So right now I am drinking the IFS Kool-Aid. So, yeah,
Internal family systems, right?
yes, yeah. So
Okay.
the concept is this, that within a person, there is not just this concept of mono personality, one personality, right? There are numerous personalities, and not just like, personalities, oh yeah, of course I have different personalities. It is the concept is that these personalities they have full lives themselves. They have jobs and they have roles, to protect the system of personalities, or protect younger parts that have been hurt many years ago. And then, so the concept is, and this makes it, I gravitated towards this a few years ago because it said, wow, this makes sense, right? Because I saw people kind of struggling with, why am I doing this when I know better? Or I got to change because I hate this part of myself, right? And people were more stuck. And to me, at times, I thought I was just taking a sledgehammer, right, with no finesse. And so here comes, I discovered IFS, and it made sense to me. And the American Psychiatric Association pulled from its DSM, its Bible of diagnosis, this multiple personality disorder, which I'm glad they did, because then we would all have multiple personality disorder. So the concept then is that if I work with a person, or if an IFS therapist works with a person, they must be attuned to, they're not just working with one person, they're automatically working with many, right? And many of those people have roles. There's protectors, which they're managing protector parts, which try to protect a person from feeling vulnerable, whatever vulnerabilities that they might kind of fear feeling. Like I might fear feeling sad. And that's because when I was younger, every time I felt sad, something either invalidating or abusive or traumatic happened. So I'm going to learn to put sadness away, right? And make sure I don't feel sad, right? So these parts develop to do this job. Now, the challenge is these parts were created when many of us were very young. So it's as if, asking a 6-year old to make sure that the 3-year old doesn't get upset. So then the job that they will do it this way. So just don't cry then. Just don't cry. Just don't cry. Here, let's do this. Let's people please so you'll never have to cry, right? As opposed to saying, "Oh, you're sad, you you need some comforting," right? Again, it's because if you ask a 4-year-old to do that for a 3-year-old, that's going to be the natural reaction. So then that continues along. You have other parts that can't come out because it's very scary to that person. So
Mm-hmm.
they have different personalities that take on these different roles to make sure that that happens, and you have parts that take on different roles to make sure another part doesn't get in the way of, taking on that role of making sure you never get sad or angry. Then you have
Mm-hmm.
these extreme firefighters that come out and say, if if all these things come out too much, it reset the system.
Hmm.
So in essence, the IFS is learning to recognize when parts are coming out, what needs to be healed, recognizing this concept of when self energy is present. And I like this also because it's simple, but there's lots of skills you need, and you have to pay attention to yourself. It's like I have to be aware of my parts
Hmm.
constantly, and I have to kind of be more comfortable with them and
Hmm.
uh, have my own self energy and do what I need to do to have my own self energy present. Because if you're a client, and let's say I have a part that's leading the way, and maybe that part is the part that says, "Ugh, don't like sadness." So what might happen is that you're going to talk about sadness, and then here's a part that says, "Oh, Jenny, don't talk about sadness," and then it'll come out that way, right? So yeah, in a nutshell, that's I don't know if I did the explanation justice. However, that's in a nutshell what this is about.
I think you did, and I admittedly don't know a lot about IFS, right? I practice primarily from an acceptance and commitment therapy
Mm-hmm.
stance, do a lot of exposure and response prevention, and then some of the like PTSD
Mm-hmm.
manualized trauma therapies
Yeah.
like that. So, and IFS really it in the way that you're describing it, I hear such important threads of like compassion,
Oh,
right?
yes. Very
Like
good.
like
Mm-hmm.
what a north star in this therapy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where like there's both that like perspective taking, which is a part of compassion, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
being in that mindfulness thing as well, where like you're able to see and like notice what's happening for you in the moment with this sense of non-judgment, and then
Mm-hmm.
to be able to reflect on that like as a clinician, and to be able to like hold space for that as like you're
Yeah.
working with this client. And so
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
I think like as a like if I'm talking about something that's like really difficult for me, and that like little protector comes out in you, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
like you might find yourself doing the work for me instead of like
Right.
just allowing me to have
Yes.
this space and like to
Yeah.
like identify that actually I probably don't need the protection anymore. Or
Right.
maybe I have grown to learn to protect myself in more helpful ways. But
That part might be leading, and you might have a part that says, "I don't like that protector right now. I don't like
mm,
his part."
mm-hmm,
Right. So lots of
mm,
kind of things can happen if I'm being led by parts as opposed to just kind of this concept of my own self energy, which is, and that's another story to talk about what that actually is.
mm.
But yeah, you kind of nailed it
I,
because you're
I
smart. You're so smart.
well, I had some really great supervisors, Steven.
Where? Let me meet them. Let me meet them.
You're a star. Look, in the intro, I was like, David is one of the therapists that I would go to if I needed therapy. Also, if
Oh,
we weren't like friends and like
yeah,
if
yeah,
there
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like a total
yeah, yeah,
boundary
yeah,
violation. But like
yeah,
you are totally somebody that I would come to and like
yeah.
trust my like most
Oh,
sacred and tender parts with. And
yeah.
so um yeah, which I mean, which brings us to this like pivot. And so maybe we can do a little bit
Yeah, if you
of
wish. Yeah,
of that work. Like let's see what it's
yeah.
like. Get ready for the tears. Um so a little bit of context that I'm sure you remember, but like um my mom, love her. We have started talking again. So when you were supervising me,
Oh, yes. Yeah. Enough. Yeah,
we
yeah,
weren't actually talking. And
yeah.
it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't like so yeah, we'll just jump into it. So I am me. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna be me. I'm not gonna role play anything. I just this is a real play. This is just
Okay, good.
all my
Yeah.
shit. Um so um when you were my supervisor,
Hmm.
my mom and I weren't talking. And I even noticed the like pull to like be like, oh, it wasn't because of this, but like genuinely, like I stopped calling her, and then
Hmm.
it just turned out that she just didn't call me back. And like
Yeah.
sometimes that was hard. And sometimes that was understandable, but my takeaway from that was that like if I'm not doing the work with her, then there actually isn't a relationship. So she reached out to me. God, and you were supervising me in 2008, was it 18? I want to say like, was I super pregnant when we were working together?
No. Uh-uh.
I had no baby, or had I had a baby?
You
I don't think.
had you had a child, right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it
Yeah.
must, and my dad had died
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was, I want to say like 18 and 19, and we. So my mom reached out to me for my 40th birthday. I don't think it was like a gift. I don't think she was like, I'm going to give her a present, and then she reached out to me. I think that was just one of those like big anniversaries,
Mm-hmm.
and so she reached out. And when my dad died, he he had always wanted me to get back in touch with her, like always wanted me to get back in touch with her,
Mm-hmm.
have a relationship with your mom, do this thing. But like no matter how many times I told him, I'm like, look, two people actually have to participate in a relationship in order for it
Right.
to be a
Right.
relationship. And so I had made the promise to him before he died that if she were to reach out to me, I would show up. Like the
Mm-hmm.
door is open and she has to come to the door. Like she has to come here.
Mm-hmm.
So she did. And so we've been having this ongoing text relationship. I'm not necessarily ready to
Okay.
talk to her on the phone. Um, yeah. And last year, I was feeling bold,
Mm-hmm.
and I went with my aunt, my dad's sister, down to have dinner with her. I flew down
Mm-hmm.
to where she lives in Arizona, and she knew I was coming, and we had this whole plan to like meet and have a dinner and like maybe have some coffee, and then like the next day I would see her a couple times. And then when I got down there, she didn't answer the phone, and um, her husband eventually called and was like, "Oh, she has COVID, but she should be good by tomorrow, so we'll try again tomorrow."
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's how COVID works, um, but I hear you.
Yeah.
We'll try again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really trying to let that be, right? To let that experience just be.
Okay.
Um, and now she's just, and then she sent me what my sister calls a burden box. I don't, it's a box of things that she doesn't want to sort through that are too
Oh, I
emotionally
see. Yeah,
evocative.
yeah.
So Alyssa has dubbed these burden
Yeah,
boxes. So
I like it. And you received a burden box.
I received a burden box. It is currently sitting downstairs in my living room,
Oh,
unopened.
okay. All right. So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. So,
No, please,
yeah.
please do.
All right. So if we're gonna just kind of do this as we do this,
Hmm.
one thing I would do is,
Just do it.
well, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it that you have an openness towards this to parts, even if you don't know what it is. You have an openness because I would approach it differently if I sent someone who was less open or open. So we're just gonna do it like you're open. So, all right. So you received this burden box. I mean, and thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of things have been going on with you, right? And it sounds like you have a definite kind of a mindful process you're involved in, right? I'm going to let this be. I'm not going to rush things, right? So to me, it sounds like there's a kind of a nice mindful process that you're treating all of this with. So I'm wondering if there's something that you think any part of you that needs some attention. So maybe something that feels, you might have this mindful process, but in the background you're hearing something that I don't know if I want to do this, or I'm scared about this, or any like edginess that you might notice that you're experiencing while you're kind of contemplating this burden box?
I mean, totally, right? Like there is an uncertainty about what the burden box contains.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, and she is not a reliable reporter. And in my mind, the burden box contains like an entire lifetime of things that I don't want to make a decision about throwing away.
Right.
And that I hadn't like carried forward in my life,
Mm-hmm.
specifically because they weren't mine to carry forward.
See if you can just, for now, just see if you can go, okay, I notice that this part of me needs attention. It could be a side that is, I don't want to open the box, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be another part that says I should open the box, or it could be a
Mm-hmm.
part that says why are we even bother opening the box, or
Mm.
so if you just listen for anything that feels like right, there might be a little stuckness or judgment or anxiety or fear, and then just the beauty of this is that we people always eventually get to the thing that they need to get to, so you can almost pick anything.
Mm.
So just kind of scan inward and see if there's anything that stands out that you think, yeah, maybe this needs some attention from
Mm.
me.
I see. I see. Um, yeah, I am. I'm afraid. This is interesting. So I'm afraid to open the burden box
Right.
because I'm afraid that if I open that and deal with that shit, then I also have to deal with the bag of my dad's clothes that are in my attic that I haven't dealt
Okay.
with either.
Okay. All right.
And so it's like,
There's a part of you that is scared,
yeah,
right? And maybe is scared to open it because then it might be more of your burden, right?
oh, totally.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe take a breath, right? And so people can do this with their eyes open or eyes closed. It's really up to you. So there is a part of you that you know is so scared to open the box because if it opens the box, it means you will be responsible for their burdens, right? Yeah, okay. So when you kind of, is that part, do you notice it, the part with you right now? Can you feel it? I mean, is it
No.
present?
The, like, the part of me that feels responsible for my mom's burdens is like,
There.
yeah, it is like,
Okay.
it is consuming like this portion of my body.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's start there because its presence is known to you right now, right?
Mm.
I this part that is saying I'm responsible for my mother's burdens, right? Okay. And so if you focus in on it, you were very descriptive. It's like here. Can you just spend a second more to see if you can notice a little more detail of what that is? Is it located in your chest? Is it moving? Is it spreading upward? Any kind of detail about its presence in your body.
I mean, it sort of like shifts in this like into like my throat.
Okay.
Yeah, I can like feel like a tightness here.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Now, as you focus in on that sensation or where this part might be located at this time, um, um, uh, do you get a sense that it's moving a lot, or is it still? Is it anchored?
it gets sort of muted.
Okay.
Like I can feel this like I don't know if it's I wouldn't describe it as like a pushing down, but like a receding,
A
like
receding. Yeah.
yeah, like the ocean just sort of like goes back.
Yeah.
The wave just goes back into the ocean.
Okay. Yeah. So the physical presence, or at least the sensation of physical presence, is you can notice it. I mean, it's pretty big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you were able to take this part out of you um, and materialize it in the 3D world, right? And materialize it right in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
what would you imagine it would look like?
Oh my God, the first thing that comes to my mind is the like the cigarette lung that they passed around in fourth
Oh,
grade.
yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Just this
it's
like
yeah,
rotting, like diseased, like
right.
it was this like soft pink tissue at one point, but it's
Right.
like
But
no.
over time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And if you were to take a guess at how close this part is to you, what would you say? Is it within arm's distance, or is it 100 feet away, or is it right here?
Oh my God, it was like sitting on my desk.
Okay. All right. So it's pretty close. You could touch it, right?
I mean, yeah, it's like I have my microphone stacked on 3 books because that's just sort of like how and it's like leaning on the books and like getting juice on the Heart of Darkness. Like I'm so sorry,
Okay.
Joseph Conrad.
Right. So its presence is well known.
Yeah.
It's right there. All right.
Yeah. But I also feel like about it being there.
Yeah.
Like it's close, but I'm also like
Yeah.
don't touch it.
Right. Okay.
Don't
All
touch
right.
it.
So it kind of segues into my next question, right? And which is, how do you feel towards this part? Meaning, I like it. I don't want it to touch me, right? I love it. I don't understand it, right? How do you feel towards this part? And I think you mentioned it's like this, ugh, right? Kind of a feeling of, was it maybe a little disgust, or how would you
Yeah,
describe that?
yeah, I think disgust is pretty apt. It's like I I don't know that it's like I'm not necessarily disgusted with the part of me that did have to carry her burdens in that way,
Mm-hmm.
but that like this is something that I had to do to survive that
Mm-hmm.
relationship,
Okay. All
you
right.
know. And so it's more like I don't know that the disgust. I mean, I guess because it's a part of me.
Well, disgust it means in this context, stay away from something that's toxic.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah.
And like
All right.
carrying her stuff
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
not served me,
Right.
at least
Right.
not in adulthood.
Got it. Okay. So you've noticed as you kind of focused in this part that there is a part of you that kind of harbors this like you're toxic. I don't want you anywhere near me, right? And so um, um, ask that part if it wouldn't mind stepping aside for just a few minutes. And you can say, would you mind stepping aside, and you don't have to really worry about that part for a few minutes. I've got this, and would you mind stepping aside and see what it says?
Like it feels so scary.
Okay. It's scared to step aside, yeah? Yeah, okay. Just let that part know you understand that. And if it doesn't want to, it doesn't have to. Just let that part know. If you could step aside for a few minutes, right, it will help me work with that part that you're scared with. And see if that makes a difference.
I mean, I can like sense the courage
Mm-hmm.
that's required for that
Yeah,
task. Um,
right. That's important to notice that this part, it requires courage for this part just to step back for a little bit, right? Yeah. And so just acknowledge that. Tell that part, I understand the courage it takes for you to just step back for a few moments. And just say that and then wait. Is it willing? Do you get a sense it's willing to step back for a bit? And
It's
if
so
not, that's
sticky.
okay.
I want to say yes. It's so sticky. It's so like,
Well,
it feels
yeah.
so rigid.
Yeah, so don't worry about what you want to say. Just really honor the part if it doesn't want. So the beauty of this is that if parts don't want to do something, that's really important information too. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So as you kind of just focus in on the part that is really, really reluctant to step aside,
Mm.
does it, do you get a sense it wants, it totally doesn't want to step aside, or it will step
I,
aside a little bit?
I think it will let me like peek around it.
Okay. Okay. So so tell this part, thank you for that. And as soon as you think you need to step back in, then please step back in. And if you think it's too unsafe to go further, please let me know if you think it's too unsafe to go further. And see if that agreement makes that part a little bit more relaxed to let you kind of spend more time with the.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, yeah. And so do you notice that maybe in your system itself, that feeling of like, stay away from it has decreased a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed my shoulders
Yeah,
changed and like my throat is like just
good.
a regular throat and not a constricting thing that nothing gets
Yeah,
in.
good. Excellent. And again, just thank that part. Thank you so much for stepping aside a little bit. Now, focusing your attention on the part that feels responsible for your mom's burdens, refocus your attention and now tell me, how do you feel towards that part?
I mean, I have an appreciation
Okay.
for it.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a pinker lung.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So go ahead and tell that part what you've just told me, that you have an appreciation for it. And if you have a moment also, if you can include what makes you appreciate it, go ahead and tell that part that as well.
I appreciate the way that it has kept me safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to carry things.
Yeah. Yeah, and go ahead and just tell that part yourself. So I appreciate how you,
Mm.
right? And you can do this silently or out loud, whichever feels more comfortable.
I, I do appreciate how you have been able to carry her things.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is there a response? Do you hear anything back?
Just kind of an echo chamber.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just,
Sometimes parts will be shy or they won't say much until they can maybe understand and trust the person that's trying to connect to it. So that's totally okay. Um, ask this part if it is okay if you spent just a few minutes today to get to know it better. Just go ahead and ask it and see what response you get.
Can I get to know you better? It is like vanished. It's
Okay.
like
Vanished
gone.
meaning you don't sense it at all, or
Yeah, like it's like almost like a ghost that has like evaporated.
okay. So go ahead and re-invite that part, right? And say, and if it doesn't want to come back, then that's fine too. But just go ahead and say, I notice you may have gone away, but I would really like to get to know you, and I'm not going to try to change you. I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm just really want to get to know you, and see if that part comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is this like sense of like cautious reemergence.
Okay. All right. Good. So just thank the part for coming back, and say say to the part, um, can you tell me what got you scared just a few seconds ago? Because I don't want to scare you.
There is this thought, this part says that
Mm-hmm.
if I get to know it, it has to go away.
Ask this part, what has to go away?
Like if the disgust goes away, that I
Mm-hmm.
that I don't get to have like boundaries. That like somehow that disgust is this like boundaried, this like clear demarcation of like,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and then
Yeah.
if that's gone, then we are just like a soft, revealed belly.
Okay. Yeah. And so another part, very caring part that is looking after things, may have just kind of chimed in to say, hey, look, you know, um, without disgust, this is right. This is maybe unsafe, too dangerous. So see if you can ask that part if it could step aside and just say, um, can you step aside and um, you won't have to worry for the next 5 or 10 minutes that I got this. Would you be able to just step aside just for 5, 10 minutes and see if that fearful part that without disgust, right, if that part steps aside.
It can. That part can.
Okay. Well, then, yes, thank that part for stepping aside, right? Um, so now that that part has stepped aside, right, um, this kind of a warning part, the disgust part has stepped aside, right? Um, go ahead and ask that same question to the responsible part, and just say, you notice that it might have gotten frightened, and you want to know if it can tell you what frightens it so that you don't scare it again.
I mean, it doesn't want to carry stuff
Mm,
for her anymore.
it's tired.
It's so tired.
Yeah.
It's so tired. It's so tired.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
so tired.
So tell the part you understand how burdened and tired it feels. Just let it know. I can feel your burden and I understand.
Yeah, I do understand. I
Yeah.
understand how burdensome it is.
And so ask this part, if you were to give this protection job up completely, what are you afraid would happen?
I mean, it's just chaos.
It's afraid chaos would occur, right? Yeah.
Chaos will ensue.
Yes. And and so say to this part, and if that chaos ensues, what are you afraid would happen next?
I mean, when chaos ensues, it is a slippery slope to Pioneer Square and drinking and sex
Right.
work again, and like just like
Yes.
the bot, like it
Right.
is a like the chute to
Right. To a
places
place
we've
that,
already been
yeah.
there.
Yeah. And so then say to this part, so you're trying to prevent me from going that to down that route. You're trying to help me keep safe, keep my current life intact, and see if it says yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so
It does.
mhm, just acknowledge how important this job is. Now, now, how do you feel towards this part now?
It's softer and warmer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's closer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not a box of burdens in as much as it is just like pieces from my life.
Now check in with the parts that have stepped aside. There was a kind of this is toxic, stay away part.
Mm-hmm.
There was kind of that another overseer part, right? That kind of is a wise. If you do this, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then the humorous part,
Mm-hmm.
and then the part that said, "Fuck it, let's just burn it to the ground" part.
Yeah.
Check in with all those parts and see if they were okay with this, seeing this, witnessing it, and if they need anything from you.
Yeah, they're okay. The humor part and the burn it to the ground part are in cahoots all the time, and they want candy. That's all that they're thinking about right now. there are
Okay.
there are cinnamon gummies in the cupboard, and
Right.
then
Okay. Well,
yeah, but the other parts are
yeah.
everybody is here and
Okay.
okay with it.
All right. Good. All right.
Let's debrief this role play together.
So that's kind of a snippet. I pretty much that's how I would do things. The only thing I might do differently is that I would have gone followed another track and really started to get to see if that part would let you actually look at the younger wounded part it's trying to protect, right? Because it says it's trying to protect you from destruction and other, and if it would have allowed that
Mm.
to
And
see,
David, what is so?
mhm,
I want to pause you for just a second
yep,
because as we're going through that, I noticed that I was really I really wanted to like go with it and be in it, and that
hmm
was happening, and so I tried very intentionally to like let the therapist part of me that wants to know how this is fucking working
oh, you let,
just
yes,
like that part
yeah,
was there too, and I just
yeah,
sort of like was like, we're gonna like sideline you for just a sec and we're gonna have an
yes,
experience
good,
and like be here for
yes,
this. And so
yes,
like now I notice like that part really wants to show up, and like I'm really curious about like the mechanisms that are working in this,
hmm
what was like pull back the red curtain for me and tell me what was happening as we were doing that.
yeah. Well, so first of all, the concept is that you know psychologically, people, when they're functioning, their parts are more harmonious, they're more integrated. There's
Mm-hmm.
not like this polarized, like, no, do this, no, do that, but what about this? There's fewer of those internalized messages that, You should do this. If you don't do this, you're bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are jobs that these parts have. So the volumes are
Mm.
lower and they're more integrated. In order to do that, at first, you have to separate so that you can actually, because right now, sometimes with people, the parts are like this, right? It's like, yeah. So you have to ask them to kind of separate more so that your own self can go, oh, right, I can see what's happening, right? And then, so that's what's happening. There has to be some separation between the emotional content of the problem and yourself, which is, there are interventions that do this, right? CBT does this, ACT does this with this, concept of diffusion and suffering and pain, right? Putting thoughts on a lead, right? You're separating yourself from the emotional content. Ketamine does this as well, right? Chemically. So that's step one. I need to kind of establish myself and separate. Now, if that's still too difficult,
Well, yeah, what's an even smaller step? Yeah, what's an even smaller? Because like for someone who hasn't done any work at all, or is like
mhm,
struggling to even like see that, like maybe this is just all like the volume is on 10 on
yeah,
everything, like you're
everything, right?
saying, right? Like, what's an even smaller step than like taking everything apart and being able to like look at it?
It's to be able to just start with this. Small step is instead of going, I feel this and I feel that, but I feel this, is to then get used to this concept that, well, if you say I, you end up in dismissing the part that actually has that feeling. It's like, let's say you're facilitating a meeting and I'm part of it, right? And there's five other people and you're running the meeting, right? If I say, I think that we should do this, you may not do this. Well, I don't agree with you. Be quiet. What else? You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Or you may not go, that's it. That's the best solution. Meeting adjourned. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's doing that, being a facilitator of sorts with your own parts. By first, I want to recognize without as much judgment as possible that, you know, part of me wants, so you did a good job of like, you know, being able to focus on each part. Part of you wants to, doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to look at the box.
Mm-hmm.
Part of you felt it must look at the box.
Mm-hmm.
Part of you said, stay away from the box.
Mm-hmm.
Part of you started thinking, how did we get here to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in order to make it so that one doesn't overwhelm, you just it's like labeling feelings, right? If you teach, you teach someone to label feelings. What does stress mean? Tell me what's, you feel this. And then I statements. I feel this, I feel this, I feel that alone, right? It may not improve the person, but it decreases that kind of like, connection to the emotional content.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. I'm labeling my feelings. I will now label my parts who do have these feelings. So part of me of this, part of me of that. So sometimes people that are, I might give them that homework. Just this week, can you replace I statement, I this, I that with a part of me for everything?
I love that. I love that as a
Yeah.
really manageable, actionable, small
Hmm.
step that someone can take to start implementing this in their lives, even outside of the context of doing this with
Yeah.
you as a professional therapist.
Yeah.
And I also love the like in being at that meeting table with all of these different meeting guests, right?
Hmm.
We are saying hello to each one of these
Right.
people, right? And they are all welcome in this meeting. And
That's
like
right.
nobody has to go away, nobody has to be
Hmm.
shooed out of the room or hidden, and everybody has a spot and a voice at the table. I
Right.
think that's something that I really appreciate about
Well,
this and about this experience.
that's it's actually a technique as well. It's a roundtable technique, and typically I will go there when a person is able to hear all of the different parts, right? Because at first it's helping someone maybe help a part turn its volume down, But once you do that, then you can notice the other parts. And once a person notices that, they can hear a lot of different things. And so then, we'll do this round table thing, invite them all, see who's there. Do they know each other? What are they? Can you hear everything that they say? And then I'll write it down. And okay, so this part wants this, 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 and this. Can you acknowledge that the validity of all that? And a lot of times they'll find out that half the group doesn't know the other half exists,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Interesting.
they would like to work better together, or half the group doesn't like the other half, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
like the other half because they don't understand what their job is. So
Mm.
then when you ask them for what their job is, you have other parts that will go, oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we actually need them. Like, we
Yeah.
for sure need them on our team. We
Well,
should not vote them
yeah.
off our island.
Right. Well, you've experienced some of that too because you had
Yeah.
parts that were initially not kosher with going into paying more
Yeah.
attention to protect mom, protect everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then as they stepped aside and as more parts stepped aside, then they can look and go, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that protector part, right, was trying to save everyone from destruction and chaos.
Yeah.
And in that
Yeah.
moment, why then when I say check in with the other parts is if they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, then it might tell me they still don't know the value of that part. But
Mm-hmm.
usually they're always pretty much okay, or
Yeah.
the thing that they want is candy, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They've like moved on to the candy,
Yeah.
but then the parts that like are actually like still participating in the meeting and not just daydreaming about
Yeah, yeah.
cinnamon gummies are like, oh yeah, like they're welcome here, like for sure. Like
Yeah. They
keep them.
start to understand. And so that's
Yeah.
the beauty of it. Even though they're your subconscious personality parts,
Mm-hmm.
many times they don't have no idea what other parts are there helping, how these other parts are helping, the value of that protector part, right? Really kind of respecting, wow, that part's got a lot of stuff it's doing, right?
Yeah.
And
David,
that's
you're
important for one more thing. One more thing,
yeah.
real quick.
Tell
I
me.
hope I'm not talking too much, but so that
No.
but it's a basic thing, with ACT and DBT and everything. It's non-judgmentalness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this IFS approach explains why non-judgmentalness towards yourself is necessary. Because
Mm-hmm.
then I can understand, oh, right, if one part is judging the other, that makes sense why that part's not going to feel great and not want to come out, right?
Mm,
So
totally.
then there's a reason then for me to say, so in DBT now, when we go over DBT stuff, I'll pull out this. Do you know why you need to validate yourself other than
Mm.
it feels good?
Yeah.
And then I'll
Yeah.
say, here's why. And I think sometimes people will go, oh, that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that um, it can be so hard to conceptualize what it looks like in practice to practice non-judgment, right? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what am I being not judgmental of my
Yeah.
behavior, of my words, of my, like, what is the thing? But having it really anchored to like this part of you that needs something and that like
Hmm.
longs for something or that like shows up in a certain way, like having the non-judgment really be anchored to a part, it seems like such a more actionable step than just a blanket statement of practice non-judgment,
Right.
which like that just feels very advanced, like that. It feels like some like Buddhist monk living at Plum Village kind of stuff, right? Whereas like if you're like, can we just like
Uh,
not judge the part of you that has like
right.
actually tried to prevent disaster in your family since you were like 8 years
Yeah.
old? Like,
Right.
can we just not judge that part of you? We can talk about the judgment of the other parts, but like,
Hmm.
let's just like focus. Like that seems like such a manageable and
Yeah.
like concrete step you can take.
Yeah.
David, you're brilliant. You lived up to my hype. You lived up to the hype in my
Oh my
head.
gosh.
You lived up to the hype in my intro. I'm so stoked on it.
I love that part of you that is like gets charged up. Yes, you're brilliant. Now I want candy. So
They work together. The candy part of me fuels many, many other parts of me.
hmm
Ah, um, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I do have to admit that, like, I don't know. I know people are concerned about RFK taking his position because of like vaccines and stuff, which yeah, I get that, but like I am deeply worried about the impact of taking away red dye on my candy because I like what's going to happen to hot tamales? What's going to happen to my red cinnamon lips? What's going to happen to my red vines, right?
You're
Like
just gonna have to close your eyes when you eat them, right? If
I
they're
mean
not gonna be red.
there is a saying that it all tastes the same with your eyes closed. I think
Yeah,
that's a saying. Somebody said that somewhere.
yeah.
David, if somebody is listening, where can they get more of you?
Um,
And
well, I have a,
do you want to give more of you to this world?
yeah, I mean, if I'm available, sure. So yeah, they can go to my website, which
Okay.
is pretty simple, davidlimtherapy.com.
Yeah, I'll put that in
Yeah,
the show notes. Love it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
And are you taking new clients? Is this for like training and supervision? Is this for your DBT groups? Like are you or is it just like a reach out and we'll see?
Well, so
Those many questions.
yeah, so yes, I appreciate the reach out, and I, I become I have my private practice right now is pretty full. However, openings always occur. So if people
Okay.
are interested, they can try this. They can look on my website, and there's other things approaches that I use. If they're more comfortable with that, then they can do that. Yeah.
You're
So
extraordinary. You're an
yeah.
extraordinary human, and I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for everything that you have done for me and as a downstream impact my clients and the people in this world. You really make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Most
Well,
you won't even know.
I appreciate that. Uh, and the same goes for you.